Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. Taoiseach, last night on the national broadcaster on the 6-1 News, the Garda Inspectorate report, or elements of it, were leaked, and Minister Shatter gave an interview in relation to it and reforms that may emanate from its recommendations in advance of any consideration by Cabinet of this report, and did so in a selective and self-serving manner. Now, Taoiseach, I think even that brings the levels of news management and damage limitations synonymous with the government to a new level indeed. And I think it was wrong in the context of the gravity of the report and the impact of the report. It's a report I've been asking for the last number of weeks in conjunction with other issues we were discussing in the House, but of course it wasn't ready for publication some weeks ago for obvious reasons. The report apparently indicates, Taoiseach, major administrative dysfunction, failure of management oversight, and a context and a sense of material that is absolutely in stark contrast to the O'Mahony report into penalty point cancellations. In essence, it would appear that the report is a vindication of the whistleblowers who brought these issues to the surface, and who, incidentally, certainly one of the whistleblowers was actually interviewed by the Garda Inspectorate, which is kind of interesting in itself. And I think at the heart of this issue, Taoiseach, is the treatment of whistleblowers within our system. The whistleblowers here were isolated, they were undermined, they were barred from access to records, to the PULS system, and in essence, they were told their behaviour was disgusting by the Garda Commissioner. The Minister, however, as the leader, as the Minister for Justice, he brought it to a new level when on the floor of this House he said that they did not cooperate with the investigations of the authorities and in particular of the O'Mahony report.
Question, please.
And he went outside of the House to say that their accusations were wild and groundless and had no evidence. Now, Taoiseach, I think that is at the core of this. Just think for a moment, if the whistleblowers in the Neary case were treated in that manner, what would have been the outcome of that? I would ask you, Taoiseach, have you talked to the Minister for Justice about this? And I know he finds it very, very difficult to unequivocally apologise to anybody. But in the light of this report, could you ask him to apologise unequivocally for his comments, for misleading comments and undermining the whistleblowers concerned? If he can't, Taoiseach, would you apologise on behalf of the government for the treatment meted out to these particular whistleblowers on this very specific issue?
Thank you. Taoiseach.
Allegations were made back in September 2012 by a whistleblower in respect of the operation of the fixed charge and processing of penalty points. Now, this matter was the subject of very lengthy discussions in this House and at committee already. As I understand this, there was an internal Garda report, there was the O'Mahony report. Both of these were referred to the Garda Inspectorate by the Minister for Justice, which was the right and proper thing to do. Arising from that Garda Inspectorate report, which is an overview of the two reports and the entire process, my understanding is, and I haven't seen the report, that there are a lengthy series of recommendations in this report to be presented to Cabinet in the afternoon by the Minister for Justice. The report will be presented to the Cabinet in the afternoon by the Minister for Justice. My understanding is that it contains a lengthy series of recommendations which the Minister accepts, which the Minister will recommend to Cabinet that he implement. Some of these will require, I understand, some legislative initiative, resource initiatives and so on. But it does mean that Inspectorate report, plus the overall review that's taking place by GSOC, the Garda Ombudsman Commission, will mean that this matter will have had intensive and very focused scrutiny about how it should operate. I agree with you that the Garda whistleblower was engaged in conversation and discussions with the Garda Inspectorate in regard to this matter, which has probably helped the Garda Inspectorate have a full and comprehensive analysis here. The difference of opinion between the Minister for Justice and the Garda whistleblower was in regard to the matter of a claim that deaths arose from penalty points not being imposed. And I think that matter was referred to quite clearly in the report published by Inspector O'Mahony. So Minister will publish this report today, lay it before both houses of the Oireachtas. The Dáil itself can discuss the report, and the Oireachtas committee can discuss the report. And that's in advance of the GSOC report coming in after it, which again will be published, which again will be debated here. So the dysfunctionality which has now come to light will be the subject of serious focus to get it right and fit for 21st century systems. Insofar as apologies are concerned, I've already said to you that the Minister for Justice had one interpretation of what was on here, and Garda McCabe had a different interpretation. That matter was the subject of intense discussion here. The Minister for Justice will be responding himself to the report when the Dáil details time for its discussion.
Thank you.
Taoiseach, with the greatest respect, I think what one can now see over the last year or so and more is that basically the system tried to bury this, and the Minister went along with that modus operandi. Despite the Road Safety Authority sounding the alarm bells with the Minister for Justice, Minister Varadkar, by the way, accepted the credibility of the whistleblower on this issue, and I know Minister Varadkar did stand his ground with Minister Shatter. And then you had the CNAG report, which found about 67,000 cancellations, in contrast to about 600, apparently, from the O'Mahony report. So it's not as if there wasn't evidence around. And it's the Road Safety Authority who recommended that it would go to GSOC in the first instance. The Minister refused that. He had to be dragged screaming to get the report eventually to GSOC. But the bottom line, Taoiseach, is there's no difference of opinion. What he said on the House was, indeed having, and he said this about the whistleblowers, indeed having engaged with members of this House and published material, they didn't cooperate with the Garda investigations that took place. That's Alan Shatter on October the 1st, Minister Alan Shatter on October the 1st, 2013, on the record of this House.
Thank you.
And his whole tone, demeanour, was to isolate and undermine the whistleblowers and present them as unreliable mavericks who couldn't be trusted. That was the import of what he was at, Taoiseach.
Thank you, Deputy.
That's what he was at. No difference of
of
opinion here. He said outside of the House they were wild and groundless in terms of what they presented. He should apologise, Taoiseach. And let's not try and get this down to very narrow definitions and disagreements and so on. It's nothing to do with it. He actually led the way in undermining people who were bringing issues of public importance, no matter how uncomfortable for people, bringing them to the surface. They were undermined. And it goes to the heart of how a system and how a government treats whistleblowers.
Thank you.
And the Minister is very culpable in terms of the remarks he made on the floor of this House. And it's quite shocking and unacceptable and disgraceful
Deputy,
that he hasn't within him the capacity to do the honourable thing and say he was wrong to say what he said on the floor of the House, and he was wrong to seek to undermine the whistleblowers in this instance.
Thank you.
That's what should happen now. That's not
Sorry, Deputy.
dancing the fire.
Yeah, please, sir.
Well, I might say to you that actually this is the first time that a government is prepared actually to change the system. Now, it's all very well for you to come in here with your righteousness every week. When you forget that in 2003, there was a report given to your government and nothing done about it. Attorney General gave advice in 2006, not so long ago, nothing done about it. And GSOC themselves in 2007 sent in a report and nothing done about it. This is the first time, Deputy Martin, that something's going to be done about this. And clearly, the recommendations from the Inspectorate report are following on the O'Mahony report. Some are being implemented now, all will be implemented, some will require legislation, and yet we have the GSOC report to come, which will be published and debated here. So, when you say it's not as if there wasn't evidence around, you're right. And there are 3 instances from 2003, when you sat back and did nothing about it when you had the opportunity. All I'm pointing out to you is that you come in here with your righteousness every week. You ignored all these things when you had the opportunity to do something about it. And just like everything else, this is the first time that a government is facing into to do this thing properly. And the dysfunctionality that was pointed out, and whistleblowers, as you well know, Deputy Martin, in this country have always faced the wrath of those when they point out issues that are of concern and that are of anxiety to themselves. I pointed out to you before where the Minister for Justice was coming from and where the whistleblower was coming from. The important matter which you don't want to focus on, because your own government on 3 occasions refused even to follow the Attorney General. You can't remember, of course. You can't remember.
Thank you.
But it's going to be done now. It's going to be done now. And this report will be published today. It will be debated in the committee and in the Dáil. The GSOC report will be published, will be debated in the Dáil and in the committee as needs be. And the system will be put right. That's fair, that's accountable, that's above board, and that is not subject either to celebrity intervention or political intervention.